Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. This afternoon, I recorded a tape in which I played a video of Emerson Mnangagwa speaking in Victoria Falls. And I've had some response from some of the people in my inbox. Someone sent me a follow-up, which was a video of one of the other speakers at that same conference. I think what I'll do is I'll quickly play the two videos back to back to just give you a flavor of what went on.
You had frightened me that I am meeting CEOs, meaning people who have succeeded in life and are at the top. But of course, without election. Which is good. Because in elections, you rig.
One version of one story. Elections, you rig. Let's play the second video. And this was a certain Ken Mafukidze, who was one of the organizing guys at this conference. Let's listen to what he has to say. Sorry about that, messing around.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Comrade Dr. Emerson Mnangagwa, and our line minister, Dr. Stembiso Gigignoni, and all protocols observed. I will then come back to that later. President, it really remains for me to thank you so much for making the time to be with us. I think you have graced us with, I've been listening to you a number of times, and I've been on the same, or under your leadership a number of times, but I must confess I have never encountered you this human and normal. You have told us stories which we will remember for a long time. And I think that's important. But I guess I then personally owe you a story too. I know I've been given 2 minutes. Maybe I will go a bit over it, but I need to empty what's in my heart. So I was Kumushawa Gutu before independence. And we ran away because my father's life was at stake, and we ran away into Chitungwiza in 1979. And that was an amazing encounter with electricity, with water coming out of a tape. It was all fantastic. Then I think that's when the settlement happened. And two things happened. The first one was, I think the Zipra forces came to the airport, the commanders. And my father and mother, having run away from home, said, this is a momentous occasion, because we're not allowed to listen to Radio Zimbabwe. We would actually go under trees to listen to what you were broadcasting from Mozambique. So they said, look, this is historic. We've got to all go to the airport from Chitungwiza to go and meet the comrades who you used to hear on the radio. We did that. And so I think that was Joshua Ngomo who came first, and then he went to a rally. Then a few weeks later, I think yourselves and Comrade Robert Gabriel Mugabe then came. And I think you had one of the largest gatherings this country has ever had at Zimbabwe grounds. Now, that time we were unfortunate because our parents then said, okay, listen, children, this has become serious. So we took you to the airport, but this one is for adults. We can't take you there because, it's gonna be big. And for sure, it was big because my mom, my father, and a few other grown-ups went there, and something unfortunate then happened because my mother bought Mafukidze bought special shoes for this occasion. And she went to meet you as you were coming. Unfortunately, at the rally, she then lost one of her shoes. So she came back limping with one shoe. And we had framed it for a while. I'm not sure what happened to it, the one that was left. Then a few months later, rolling forward, what then happened was Independence Day was then declared. Independence Day, guess what day it was? It was 18 April 1980. 18 April is the day that I was born. Now, why is that important? It's important because my mother said the whole country put independence on this day because that's when I lost my shoe. So, why am I talking about this, Mr. President? I'm talking about this because since 1980 to where we now, I've only seen two presidents, Robert Gabriel Mugabe and yourself. So it's not coincidence that you are seated in this chair today. A big round of applause, because for me, this is an encounter with history. When you come to this position that you are, and I appreciate what Dambudzo was saying, not Dambudzo, I mean Dumbuchena, when he said Emerson. Because Dumbuchena, I'm being corrected, but I kept the principle of the story. Because when you encounter history, it's momentous. And don't take this seat lightly. Obviously, I think Dumbuchena was much older than I am, and I'm much younger, but I will ride on the cushion of this stage in your humorous moment today to also today say to you, Emerson, you are not sitting there by some stroke of luck. You are one of two presidents in the last 50 years. Make it count. I've never been a real president. But I would like to think that when I look at what's going on, you are in what I would call legacy zone. This is not a moment for you to be playing around and trying to figure out. It's for you to leave a legacy. And how do you do that? The 300 people here are here to help you achieve that legacy.
I'll stop right there. I think I find this speech most unfortunate. Here is an individual who is publicly acknowledging that in the last 43 years, Zimbabwe has had only 2 presidents. And he thinks that Mnangagwa is special and they should be thinking of his legacy. And he was going on, wittering on about he should think of a project. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Zimbabwe, many people have died during the War of Liberation so that every Zimbabwean could live in dignity, freedom, human rights, liberty, and economic prosperity. He was talking earlier on of the marvel in 1979 when he left his rural home in Kutu to stay in Chitungwiza, at the marvel of clean running water from a tap and electricity. If he was being honest, that was normal in the urban centers. Perfectly normal. It is not normal anymore. Many places in Chitungwiza, many of the suburbs in Chitungwiza, they have no running water. I've been to Chitungwiza. There are some places there where the sewage has broken to the point where it was leaking and it created a swamp. They've never been repaired. And that has now permeated, coming back towards the houses and so forth, particularly during the rainy season. It's perfectly normal to find houses swamped. There are no electricity in many places. We have gone backwards. And it can all be attributed to one thing: our failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections. This is at the very heart of it. And not only that, right? Zimbabwe, since independence, many Zimbabweans have died. Some people put the estimate at over 40,000 in the 43 years, all killed out of greed to sustain the Zanu PF dictatorship, period. And here is somebody who has the opportunity to talk to Mnangagwa, and he's talking about, think of a legacy. The only legacy, if I was to speak to him, is that he should restore people of Zimbabwe's basic human rights and freedoms and dignity. I won't call it a legacy for the simple reason that one does not call a slave master his legacy was to free his slave, because it wasn't his right to take that freedom in the first place. They're only restoring what he had stolen from somebody. 43 years of rigged elections. of tyrannical regime. That is what has put us in the serious economic situation we are in, where millions are living in abject poverty. Another 5 years of this Zanu PF dictatorship is unthinkable. How anyone can then turn around and say, I've never encountered you, this human and normal. That is nothing human about being a tyrant, corrupt, incompetent, murderous tyrant. A minute ago, before his own speech, Mnangagwa had admitted that he rigged the elections. And yet it was water off a duck speck. That is what I find so unbelievable about some of our Zimbabwean friends. It reminds me when I was a young man, one of my cousins on my mother's side visited my brother and me where we were staying. This was Meru. And he was telling us, oh, my growing Dangote shunya shunya. My brother, because I was in boarding school then, I just on holiday. My brother told me, well, you know, he has been hitting his wife. And they said, well, you know, but to me, even just slapping somebody, you know, an adult being slapped, it makes me, this should not happen. And it turned out he was one of those who, if he had had a few drinks, would become very violent. Anyway, my brother and myself decided maybe we should, one of us should visit the wife. And when we did, we were shocked. She was in a really terrible state. How anyone could beat up a fellow human being like that beggars belief. What is it that she done so wrong that you would abuse somebody physically to that extent? It's unbelievable. And yet here we are. Here is somebody who is doing it at even a grand scale, at the national level. Over 40,000 people have been murdered for political gain. Millions of people are living in abject poverty for the sake of staying in power, to gratify his insatiable desire for power and wealth. Unbelievable. We are hoping, or at least the nation is hoping, that SADC will put an end to this madness. That the SADC summit that has been set for 31st of October, will really put an end, a full stop to this madness. Zanu PF rigged the elections, and has rigged elections ever since the country's independence. This is why we are stuck with this corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical regime for 43 years. How anyone at all can stand up and say, I've never encountered you this human and normal. Mnangagwa is not human. He is not normal. This is just a buffoon, drunk on power. Somebody once said that Zanu PF would rather burn the whole house down, the whole country down, than let anybody else rule it. This is what we are seeing now. That is not normal. That is not human. Human beings are meant to feel for other people, empathize. How could you be so totally indifferent to the suffering of other fellow human beings? One of the problems we have had in Zimbabwe is the so-called intellectuals have let the nation down. Instead of them standing up to the regime and saying, no, this is not right, they are the ones who have been propping up the regime. Mnangagwa and Mugabe before him have never had problems recruiting from the intelligentsia. We have got this weakness. If you can't beat them, join them. And we've seen it happen again and again. It's tragic. Kenias, Mafukidze and his colleagues here are the few who are living comfortably in Zimbabwe. But how can they be totally blind and indifferent to the tragic reality that is going on around them? Beggars belief. We can't pretend that Zimbabwe is picking up when we know it's not. Mnangagwa has been behind Zanu PF's rigging machinery ever since the country's independence. And he even boasts about it. And somebody thinks that is him being human and normal. Just because he's not on the coalface of this tragic situation unfolding in Zimbabwe. Rebuilding Zimbabwe, I've often said, is going to be a serious challenge. To get Zimbabwe back to what it was in 1980, when the country gained its independence, will take at least 10 years of really hard work and human sacrifice, if we can be achieved at all. All because for the last 43 years, we have had a regime that felt that they were special. They've got the divine right to rule the country. Shatonga kusvika madonge amere nyanga. Was that what we really, people sacrificed their lives for? I think we really need to seriously cross-examine ourselves. This madness has got to stop. And whether we like it or not, we all feel it. Over the weekend, there was a story going the rounds that Masingo Provincial Hospital did not even have oxygen. And this was to save a young man's life who had had an accident. There was no oxygen. Kenias Mafukidze there was saying he comes from Kutu. That is Masingo. How is it possible that he didn't hear the story? Beggars belief. And yet, he is totally indifferent to all that. Of course, it's not only Masingo province that is whose health service delivery system has completely collapsed. Most of the other provinces, maybe except Bulawayo and Harare, they've got some service that is still functioning, at least for the ordinary person. Those who can afford private hospital services, they are okay. But the ordinary person, povo, they cannot afford the private hospitals. Those provincial hospitals is their referral center. And if you hear that the provincial hospital did not even have oxygen, no medication, no ambulance, one has got to ask, what more of the district hospitals in Gutu, where Mafukidze comes from, in Ndanga, Zaka, and all the other provinces or villages all over Masingo. In fact, all over the country. Gwanda, Cholocho, Mutoko there, and so forth. It's the same story. We really need to get our act together. Zimbabwe is in a serious, sorry state. And to think that we can still pretend that what is happening there is normal is absurd. It really is absurd. It's unbelievable that somebody, an intellectual for that matter, would come up with such a foolish statement. I'll just read one comment here. From Salani. Well, it doesn't say much. I know. It is a tragedy in Zimbabwe. And it is a pity that we have allowed things to get this far. And I think we really need to do something about it. I seriously, sincerely hope that SADC leaders would not let us down. They will stand up to this Zanu PF dictatorship and tell them they're illegitimate. That will give us the chance to revisit the democratic reforms that has allowed people like Mnangagwa to rig elections. The arrogance of the men beggars belief. And I have to say the stupidity of some of our intellectuals has left me speechless. We really need to sort out these problems. And I hope that the people of Zimbabwe will do so. With that, thank you very much for listening, and good night.